The study itself, when it came out, it was never peer reviewed at all. So this student
that throws up a really big red flag. If you're going to publish a study, it's not going to be peer reviewed, then what good is the study? They knew. It just kind of makes me think that they knew that they were full of shit.
Right.
And even right now, they're still defending it.
Right. This college student who did this assignment was the first person who tried to criticize the study at all or analyze the study at all. He was basically the first person to analyze it. And I have to ask, I want to throw it out there, do you think that the errors, considering the viewpoints of the people who did the study and the viewpoints that they maintain now, I would think that these mistakes and these errors were purposeful. Are we assuming that these errors were purposeful? And if they were on purpose, why would they allow this kid access to their research information?
That's a pretty good question.
Daniel, did you want to take that one, or?
I don't personally believe that. I personally believe that they use these positions to influence people that are of Tea Party ilk / libertarian ilk to believe that this country is flat broke, when in reality it still is, by all means, the richest country in the world. I honestly believe that they believe enough of what they say, even though they're lies. So they figure, I can give this kid this research, what's he going to know? The odds are he's going to agree with us, like many people of libertarian / Tea Party ilk. And there's a lot of that going out there. But I really am surprised when I saw the study myself that he was actually able to find the errors in which they were given to him. Maybe it might have been a mistake on their part.
Well, fairly glaring errors too. And I think as far as academically, the countries that got omitted, you really could chalk up to an accidental deletion from an Excel table or something. But what in the sort of the meat of the study is kind of questionable to me is that they didn't. There's no kind of universal formula for the specific years that they picked of different countries. It very much jumps around in a manner that would seem to indicate that they're looking for specific years that help them make this case. So I think that kind of what you said, Daniel, and I feel this way about a lot of conservatives, that there is honest belief in what they're saying. It's misguided and it's influenced by, incorrect facts. But
Lucas, if I can interrupt you for a second, I actually want to go back to what you had said. The first segment, I believe, in that it was a theology of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
You want to believe that that you're doing the right thing. That austerity, the way to go. You got to tighten the country. Shrink that government down and eliminate that debt, doing all cuts because we spend too much. And that's really what their ideology is. And the fact that it comes down to is that we're not a broke country, obviously. The politicians will just tell you that if it's to help you, yeah, we're broke. But if it's to help do something that we care about, we have all the money in the world. We have more than enough money to go and invade Iraq because it helps the defense contractors.
Well,
we have more than enough money.
And that's a really great point that you bring up with Iraq. As far as people kind of believing and espousing these ideas, I see a great similarity between austerity, the way that the deficit and the debt are talked about, and the way that the lead up to the Iraq War happened, where basically there's only one position that you can have to be considered serious or credible, and that's that we have a monstrous national debt that we absolutely have to tame, and it's going to have to include cutting safety net programs. Basically, if you don't have that, if you don't concede to that point at the outset, you are not kind of considered part of this polite, reasonable, they love using the word reasonable, political conversation in D.C. And I think the same thing happened in the lead up to the war, that no, look, guys, we all know this is going to happen. Everybody get on board with it. And if you're a stick in the mud about it, you're really going to be treated like you're kind of crazy and you're ostracized.
Right.
So I think that's a key piece of it, is that right there. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if you actually say that, guys, we can really take down the debt if we grow the economy by adding jobs. If we really focus on the jobs part and getting people back to work and actually growing our way out of this in a Keynesian sort of way, investing in things like green energy, infrastructure, and all that to get people back to work, you're considered a left-wing loony, a loony, leftist, communist, socialist, Kenyan Muslim.
Well, you're
that
even
hates America, that hates freedom and hates America and everybody.
Well, and that's by design, and you're talked about as a redistributionist, which is to a degree true, and that is really the key piece, is that when you have a large national debt, the money doesn't evaporate from the system, it moves around in the system, and right now we have an imbalance where a small group of really wealthy people have a huge amount of wealth, and they know that to do a Keynesian approach means that they're going to have some of that wealth taxed away. And so that's where the huge appetite for this kind of perspective comes from, is they don't want taxes to go up. So the budgets, the spending has to be cut instead, because taxes are not an option in their perspective.
well, that's absolutely right. It's all right.
One more point. I'm sorry. Austerity in itself is also redistribution. It's just redistribution from programs that will help regular people. Instead, those programs, you cut those programs, and then you go and cut taxes for who? The wealthy. It's redistribution right back from the top. Sorry, Rico.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, Lucas's point is exactly where I was going to go in the whole argument, insofar as we need to tax the rich, and that makes you even more of a liberal, commie, leftist, Marxist.
Well, except that somehow
atheist.
raising taxes has now fallen into that category. But 10 years ago, raising taxes was it's a budget. That's 50% of what goes into a budget. But
and they can afford it.
They've been able to make even the concept of raising taxes seem like fringy, controversial idea, which is just incredible.
Right. It's okay. It's okay to cut social safety nets until they're just scraping by the skin of their teeth in order to just get by, and not enough people are getting what they need, and we still have 1 in 7 people in this country that are going hungry tonight. But it's not okay to tax the rich an additional 3 or 4 or 5 or 6%. Right now, the base tax rate for individuals is at 35%, and
that's not the effective tax rate either. That's just the statutory tax rate. The marginal tax rate is much different.
Right, but the actual average tax rate that people of higher incomes actually pay is only, the last I checked, 16% on average annually. And that means that over half of those people are paying less than that. Many of them end up paying nothing because of the tax loopholes. So not only do I think that we need to raise the effective tax rate of the richest Americans, but we also need to cut out the loopholes and so that they actually pay the percentage that they're supposed to in the first place. That would take a significant chunk out of the national debt that we supposedly have, even though the 400 richest Americans have enough money to eliminate poverty worldwide 4 times over.
Well, and really, we shouldn't even be using that revenue to start paying back the debt right now. If we were to do something like that, that should just all be plowed into putting people to work.
Right.
Because to Jeff's point, expanding the economy is the best way to shrink the debt to GDP ratio. We still have debt left over, some small degree of it, from the Civil War. But whatever the total of what we owed at the end of the Civil War, I'm thinking, maybe it's in the tens or hundreds of millions maybe, you know, that to today's GDP is completely negligible. So, you know, growth of the economy is the clear way that you deal with debt. Because also, if you cut, you're shrinking the economy down, which is actually making the size of the debt to the GDP larger. So
and we've seen that in Europe.
Self-defeating. Exactly, it's this completely self-defeating process.
All right.
Right. Sorry, I was just gonna compare it to something. If we pay down the debt directly, which I think is the unwise approach, it's like taking a prescription medication. Whereas if we actually work on strengthening the foundations of our society, it's more like taking a holistic approach and actually solving the problem at its core.